As the famous philosophers known only as the Backstreet Boys once said, oh my God, we're back again. Hello, welcome to Friday, my friends. Glad you're here, and I hope the week has treated you well. As usual, if you like the video, please consider engaging with it by either pressing the like button or leaving a comment. Yesterday, the news broke that Samantha Markle, Meghan's half-sibling from hell, has filed suit against Meghan for defamation. Now, the usual disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, so my interpretation of the filing is just me doing my best. Anyway, the introduction has 10 points. Let's talk about them. The first point, which starts by pointing out that Samantha is wheelchair-bound, feels both irrelevant and is possibly not true. I mean, first of all, your mobility status bears no weight on someone's ability to defame you, so why mention it at all? The second is there have been allegations that Samantha has over-exaggerated or used her poor health in the past. Now, I'm not saying she isn't wheelchair-bound or isn't at this point. I'm just saying it seems like a weird thing to start a defamation suit with. But basically, after you get past the wheelchair thing, the first point is that Samantha is alleging that Meghan defamed her during the Oprah interview, in Finding Freedom, and in, quote, many newspapers and media outlets worldwide. The second point is trying to establish that Meghan wields influence. Samantha cites the Time magazine cover. Samantha also alleges that Meghan used the royal family's public relations offices to disseminate lies about Samantha and Thomas Markle in a premeditated campaign. Now, this is important because Samantha has dragged the royal family into this, and the burden of proof falls on her. Now, as I understand it, if this case isn't immediately thrown out, it will go through a process of discovery, where Meghan's legal team gets to ask for documents. If Samantha is alleging the palace is involved, that discovery process could walk right up to their door. The palace is not going to like that. The third point has to be further broken down into 3 separate allegations of defamation. This point is all about the Oprah interview, where Samantha alleges that Meghan made 3 statements which fall under defamation. As I read these points, remember that defamation in the United States is incredibly hard to prove, mostly because you have to prove that the statements were made both maliciously and that the alleged perpetrator knew they were false statements at the time they made them. So the 3 specific statements, all made in the Oprah interview, consist of these, according to Samantha. The first point, I'm going to call it 3A, Meghan stated she was, quote, an only child. This one is really stupid. First, because on its face, Meghan can say she was an only child. She is the only child between Thomas and Doria, her parents. Furthermore, no one is disputing that Meghan was mostly raised in the absence of her half-siblings, who were 17 and 14 respectively at the time of Meghan's birth, and that for most of her childhood, especially childhood where Meghan was old enough to remember, she was in fact the only child in the home. The second point, or 3B, Meghan stated it had been at least 18 to 19 years since she had last seen Samantha, and then 10 years before that. And you know what? Samantha's kind of right about this one. Meghan was off by a few years. There is a single stilted graduation photo from 2008, 13 years instead of 18. As far as it has been presented, this single photo is all that exists for proof of any type of relationship as adults the pair had. Samantha was not invited to Meghan's first wedding in 2011. So, yes, Meghan was off by a few years. Again, Samantha needs to prove she made that statement knowing she was lying and that she was lying maliciously. Good luck. The third point, or 3C, is that Meghan said that Samantha only changed her surname back to Markle after Meghan started dating Prince Harry. Now, this one gets messy. The photo from 2008 has Markle as Samantha's surname, which means it was likely her legal last name at the time. The problem here is what your legal last name is and what you are known as aren't always the same. See stage names. I can actually use myself as an example for this because I'm lazy, and despite being married for over 2 years and taking my husband's last name legally, I still go by my maiden name at work. Samantha has had access to 5 different surnames over the course of her life. Markle, her maiden name, Grant, her stage name, and the surnames of all 3 of her husbands, although she alleges she only ever used one of theirs. So, fine, 3 surnames. There are early tabloid articles that refer to her as Samantha Grant, and Other people have circumstantially said that they knew her as Samantha Grant, not Samantha Markle. I don't have the investigative powers that Schilling's, Megan's law firm, does, but even I can see why Megan would think that Samantha started going by Markle again to boost her connection to Megan, and it remains likely to me that that is probably what happened. Samantha retained Markle as her legal name after multiple divorces, but went back and forth as what she was publicly known as. It is pretty unlikely that Samantha can prove defamation here. The fourth point, or the fourth overall point, is that Samantha is big mad that Megan has repeatedly said that her and Samantha share no relationship whatsoever, that they've actually only even met each other a handful of times, and that Samantha has created a career out of selling false stories about her half-sister who she doesn't even know. What's funny is that in early interviews, Samantha admitted herself that she was never all that close to her sister. It was only after it became clear that Megan wouldn't allow Samantha to ride on her coattails that Samantha decided they had a close relationship that Megan was now lying about. Again, Samantha has little proof. Really, she has no proof of this relationship, and when you consider the age gap, the lack of photos, and the lack of any engagement between the two outside of talking about their father's desperate financial situation, I'm not sure what she hopes to gain from this point in a defamation lawsuit. And again, the burden of proof is on Samantha here, not Megan. I have a sister. I can easily prove that we grew up in the same household and have shared a relationship as an adult. It's telling that Samantha cannot do the same. The fifth point is where we start delving more into Jason Knopf and finding freedom. Samantha's argument is that in the email where Megan basically is bullied into allowing Jason Knopf to meet with the Finding Freedom authors, she again repeats some of the same Oprah interview points, along with a different one that Samantha lost custody of all 3 of her children. Now, there are arguments about that last point. Samantha insists that she never lost custody of any of her children, but there is other evidence that she lost custody of her youngest and surrendered custody of the 2 oldest to her mother. As adults, it has been alleged and then was confirmed publicly by the youngest of Samantha's children, Noelle, that none of them have a relationship with Samantha. I'm going to include a quote from Meganpedia about the interview Noelle did with the Daily Mail. I think it gives a very good perspective on at least Noelle's perspective of Megan and Samantha's relationship or lack thereof. Again, Samantha has to prove here that Megan maliciously lied and did so knowingly. The sixth point alleges that the information supplied to Jason Knopf by Megan formed the basis of an entire chapter of Finding Freedom titled A Problem Like Samantha. First, Samantha cannot prove what basis the authors of the book had when writing a chapter without asking them. There were many other points included. Second, in interviews, Samantha has been proud of the fact that she has been a thorn in the side of her half-sister. So why is she suddenly offended that a chapter in a book about Megan starts with "the trouble began with Samantha Markle"? It's stupid, and it's the definition of pearl clutching. The seventh point gets back into Knopf's disclosure from the previous lawsuit. I've done a full video on why Knopf's emails and texts do not prove what royalists think they do, and in fact pretty much do the opposite, so I don't really feel the need to go over this point again. I will try and link that video here, but you're all aware of my killer linking skills. But the quick and dirty is that Harry and Meghan appear under duress and are not in control of who Knopf meets with. I would add here that the party that Knopf sided with in that lawsuit lost against Meghan. The eighth point is again trying to shame Megan for forgetting the statement she made to Knopf. I will refer again to my previous video and again say that the email and text disclosures do no favors to the palace or to the lawsuit A&L would eventually go on to lose. It was in her apology that we learned that Megan does not have access to many of her records, including her own texts from her time as a senior royal. The ninth point is a doozy, and at this point in the filing, Samantha really starts to attack Megan's comments about their shared father specifically, which to me is weird in a lawsuit filing about Megan's supposed defamation of Samantha. I'm going to attach a screenshot here where you can read all the claims Samantha is upset about. It's basically a rehashing of every interview she has ever done. This time, she just puts it in writing. The 10th point goes on to mostly, actually in its entirety, defend Thomas Markle. Again, weird in a lawsuit that has nothing to do with him. You can't sue someone else for defaming someone else. Again, if this lawsuit isn't dismissed immediately, which it likely will be, the discovery process will be a doozy as Samantha has basically entered all of this into the suit. The burden of proof falls on her and her legal team, and they have made some claims in this section that are factually dubious, to say the least. As kind of an 11th point I want to talk about, I guess, is that we all have, but I've had to read multiple court filings thanks to my YouTube videos, and this one is different than the others. It's hard to describe, but it feels pretty basic and reads very simply. Like this was either rushed or Samantha went with a bargain lawyer. I don't know. Also, many of the footnotes are obviously snarky in tone, which again seems kind of weird for an actual legal filing. I find it very interesting that Samantha is only suing for $75,000, a large sum to be sure, but you would think if you were truly going after someone as wealthy as Meghan Markle, you'd ask for more. These damages are supposedly from loss of employment, loss of sales from her autobiography, and emotional and mental distress. So I talked with Lawyer Mom while editing, and apparently she thinks the $75,000 is specifically an amount that will get Samantha into federal court versus like a local state judge. She doesn't know why Samantha would want that. As per Lawyer Mom, federal judges are much less likely to put up with kind of BS lawsuits than most local courts. But anyway, that is the lawyer 2 cents. I also find it interesting that Samantha is demanding a jury trial. Not that I think this case will ever go to trial. I hate to use Twitter as evidence, but here I go. If you read the comments under non-British news outlets posting about this story, people, and I'm talking non-squatties here, are not being kind to Samantha. Maybe the Markles' sob story works in certain corners, but overall it seems like most people have seen them for what they are. So, some more of my opinions here. The first is that I think Samantha Markle is a liar, and I think there is very good circumstantial evidence that Samantha was never close to her sister, even as a child. That Samantha disliked Doria. According to people interviewed for another Rhoda's book, she would refer to Doria as the help, and was 17 years Meghan's senior. Samantha's own daughter has said she was outwardly jealous of Meghan's success. This lawsuit is just another rehashing of that jealousy. When researching defamation for another video, and now having seen what a successful defamation suit in the United States looks like, in my non-lawyer professional YouTube opinion, Samantha has not been defamed by Meghan. And even if she had, there's nothing in this filing that looks like actual proof of defamation, just more whining. Then, of course, there is the timing. The Oprah interview aired over a year ago. Finding Freedom came out in 2020. Why wait so long to file suit? As I've been saying on Twitter over the past 24 hours, I don't think the point of any of this is to win anything. I think Samantha has been out of the news cycle for too long and is trying to squeeze back into her 15 minutes of fame and get some quick cash. This filing all but guarantees her name will be back in the press today, and she'll do a round or two of paid interviews on British and Australian morning shows. I had a whole section about legal fees, but apparently, again, according to Lawyer Mom, it's actually pretty hard to recoup legal fees except in specific circumstances. So now I'm going to back off that topic because I don't really know. But the area that I feel Samantha still might have miscalculated again is the discovery process. I mean, the most likely outcome in this case is that Meghan's legal team asks for a summary judgment, kind of like the A&L case, and they're granted one, and the judge throws us out. But if it is allowed to continue, that means Meghan gets to ask questions, and the burden of proof is again on Samantha. She has roped in her own father, the palace, Jason Knopf, and the authors of Finding Freedom into this defamation rodeo. There is also a rumor floating around Twitter that this was some preemptive legal action by Samantha. Now, I'm not quite sure in the legal realm what she could be trying to preempt, but it is interesting that this legal filing is basically every Markle gripe put into writing with a good amount of snark to boot. We will have to wait to find out. My money is still that this was an ill-informed and desperate attempt to get Samantha's name back into the press, as anti-Meghan sentiment is no longer globally really very popular. Again, we'll just have to wait and see. I also just wanted to say a quick thank you for those who have been around long enough to watch my atrocious 2 minutes for Samantha Markle video from the early days of this channel. It was a mess. I'm continuing to be a mess, but I appreciate all of you. Thank you for watching this video and helping the channel continue to grow. See you next week.